Oh, hang on. Click this button. Click.
Joe Tolle, good morning. How are you, brother?
I'm awake. I've already been on the phone talking ATVs for like an hour with some buds, and so I'm fully juiced and ready to go.
Do you just like have a device connected to your ear?
But why is that? Oh, pretty much, yeah. But I'm smart. I never actually hold it to my ear. I just put it on speakerphone and hold it in my hand because I I would have had brain cancer 20 years ago.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the morning show. Leonard Duncan, your host, and Joe Tolle, my good friend, and ATV on demand. If you're looking to watch some videos and those little bitty biceps, we're not worried about them, but that's okay. Hey, everybody, there's a lot of amazing stuff going on in the industry of motorsports around the world, and we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of it. So, here we go. We need to thank Elka Suspension for building the best shocks in the industry. Just check it out. In every form of ATV racing across the planet, Elka shocks are out front doing the job. If you're a recreational rider, I know they have a setup for you. Make sure that you check into GBC Tires. They will have a tire for you for your ATV, your UTV, or even your truck like me. So if you're looking for performance tires, these are the guys to call. They have it in stock and will be able to provide it for you. We also need to thank the Blunt family. They're helping ATV-TALK get to the Legends race in Indiana or in Ohio, excuse me. Brain fog there. And we're going to be showing up in Ohio at the Legends race in July with Doug Eichner, myself, and Valeria, and hopefully be there to meet all of you. So check it out. Joe, we got a lot of stuff going on around the industry. I mean, there's a lot of things going on from MotoGP in Austin, Texas to GNCC in Tennessee. You got the Europeans racing over. I don't even know what country they're racing in right now, but the European Championships going on. Harry Walker's doing his thing over there. You got works in California going off. Next weekend, there's a big Best in the Desert race. So there is just a ton of things going on, not to count NASCAR and all the other stuff that we have trouble keeping up with. My first conversation piece with you, it breaks my heart to talk about this. My son is a huge fan of one of the gentlemen we're going to talk about, and I'm a fan of the other. And the man's young. It's his first chance at a title in Supercross, and he is throwing it away big time. He's fading like a swap meet T-shirt. Jet Lawrence.
What do you? No, I don't know about that. It's funny. I was sitting here last night, and at the beginning of the season, it was like I'm a Jet guy. Like after that, stellar performance last year in the outdoors, it was like, okay, yeah, I'm a Jet Lawrence guy, this, that, and the other. But then it was like, do I really want to go back? Now I was a McGrath guy. I was young and I was still a dirt bike guy. I hadn't made the jump to four wheels yet. And I was a McGrath guy. I was a Bradshaw guy. I mean, hell, I was a Stanton guy. I was a Honda guy, except for Bradshaw, who rode for Yamaha. But I'm at a point now where it's like, okay, these guys are all way younger than me. So I don't look at them like a hero status anymore. I'm just like a fan of racing, a fan of competition. And yeah, those first couple mud races at the beginning of the Supercross season, and Jet didn't win. And it's like, okay, he's not going to sweep this year like I thought he was going to do coming into round one. And, last night I thought he was going to a whole shot and run away with it because he won his heat. He won a heat. And I think Eli won a heat, if I recall. I didn't see the first 450 heat. I saw the one that Jet won. But Cooper Webb won it. It was a fight because you had defending champ Sexton was coming up on him hard. And, I mean, Sexton was fast. He was the fastest guy on the track. He got hung up behind Roxon for 2/3 of the race. and but Cooper Webb held him off. It was kind of exciting, and not because I'm rooting against Jet Lawrence, but like it's just so competitive. And if you're a fan of racing, just racing in general and of motocross, then it's just stellar. Unless you want to see somebody win every race and run away with it, it's fun if you're a kid and that's your guy. But it might feel different if it was Plessinger or Roxon, but I like Cooper Webb. I like Jet Lawrence. I'm not rooting against anybody, but I'm rooting for story. I'm rooting for drama, and boy, do we have it. Because now, I believe going into the next round, Cooper Webb and Jet Lawrence are tied.
Right. And, looking at the years of racing that I've been around and watching champions or soon to be champions, the young guy's got to get his legs under him. He's got to understand how to become a champion. And he did it outdoor, but Supercross is a totally different world for him. Cooper Webb, at the end of last year, stick a fork in him. He was over. His career was over. He was injured. He didn't look good on the KTM. He just was not flowing. He wasn't the guy that he is this year. This year, you see Cooper Webb, and trust me, I'm not even a Cooper Webb fan. No offense to Cooper Webb or any, I'm just not a fan. Sorry. He has got his legs in under him. He's striding to the championship. He knows what it takes because he's a former champion. I just see an unsettled Jet Lawrence not being able to get it all together because his nerves and his emotions are getting the best of him. And he wants that title so bad he can taste it, and he's salivating for it. But when the green flag drops, he's not prepared emotionally to go do battle with Cooper Webb and Eli Tomac and Chase Saxton. These guys are all champions in Supercross. And I never thought Chase would do anything this year, but he's proven me as well.
They did a bunch of work on the KTM beat over the last 2 weeks, from the last round to this round. And they had some parts come in from Austria they've been waiting for, probably that new cheater frame, but I'm just kidding. But no, he definitely had speed. And I think for Jet, it's going to just come down to starts. I think if Jet gets some good starts from here on out, I think it's his. I still feel like he's the guy to beat. I feel like he's got it. I mean, like, momentum's on Cooper Webb's side based upon that win, but Jet passed him and beat him in a heat race. He's faster than Cooper Webb. It's just like right now it's consistency and experience versus youth and enthusiasm and just God-given ability. So it's exciting. And I really think it might be the best year of Supercross I've seen. And I've been watching since 89, 90. So,
what was that? Five winners? Or is it 6?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we don't want to waste 5 minutes trying to figure out who they were, but Jet's got it. Tomac's won, Webb's won. Who else?
Plessinger.
Oh yeah, how could I forget? Sorry, AP. Yeah, Plessinger. So
didn't Roxon win one? No, Roxon didn't win.
Kind of thought he did. So maybe there's your 5. I'd have to go back and double check, but I thought Roxon did win one. So could be wrong. But it's an exciting time. If you haven't watched Supercross yet this year, or you just been missing it, I'd check it out or set your DVR, because holy crap, it's so good. There's drama, and me and my wife went to Indy a few weeks ago, and it was fun. It was really cool. I was sitting next to her, and I'm watching her root for Ken Roxon, and she was into it. And my buddy Al over at CT, he's like, "You'll go to one, then you'll be done." Well, Al, you're not right about everything. We we liked it so much that we're just like, all right, we're booking tickets for Indy again next year. There's no doubt we're going. So it was hopefully this time we'll do some pit passes and do some fan experience. I was coming off a little virus this year, and so my wife kept going, do you want me to get fan experience passes? Do you want me to get pit passes? And I'm just like, I want to make sure I got enough energy just to get to the race. Let's not walk around for hours. But next year we'll probably do the whole experience. And
Nice,
yeah,
nice. That's awesome stuff right there. But let's get on to some ATV stuff. They had a GNCC race in Tennessee. They hadn't been there, to my knowledge, in quite a while. And we were expecting rocks and, slippery conditions. It seemed to me, after looking at the videos and the photos, and it was great conditions for racing. Little heavy mud, but hey, that happens now and again. Dude, I'm not a fan, but I am a fan. I'm amazed at Bryson Neal. This guy is something else. He just is an animal, man. I think he's unstoppable at this point.
yeah. I mean, it definitely seems that way. I mean, I think he had a pretty good gap at the end. I think it tightened up somewhere in the middle, but I don't think Fowler ever got on his heels. So yeah, it's gonna be a runaway, and that's I don't root against anybody in ATVs because I like all these guys. I want to be able to work with all of them if opportunity arises. But it's kind of like Supercross, best year ever. ATVs, the two major series that are over here on the Eastern United States. It's a runaway. So congratulations to Bryson. Hopefully Walker gets to the point where he can get on the top of that box again soon and keep Bryson honest and push him, because that's what we want. I mean, we want to see a race. We don't want to see a runway.
Right. And Bryson is just unbelievably strong. I know Walker was pretty disgusted in round 4, and in this round he kept it closer. But there again, you got to come out and be on the guy's heels right from the start, or be in front of him. And what seems to have happened is Walker's not coming out, close to him. It's given Bryson a gap. You can't take anything away from Josh Merritt, who's got his, I think he's 3rd podium this year, and he's in a strong 3rd place in points. So he's coming up the ranks. So I mean, there's some good stuff going on there. I'm a little worried about Hunter Hart, who seems to have dropped back. The old man, Adam McGill, had some issues. I'm not sure exactly what, but we will get into it before we do the final race report. One of the classes I really wanted to talk about as well is the pro 4x4 guys. They're freaking throwing haymakers, and Cody Collier won. Tightened the points back up to within 1 point.
Yeah, so you've got some good back to the thing of good racing and competition and excitement. Yeah, pro 4x4 is the pro class to really watch, because at this point it's anybody's season, and that's what we want. Good competitive racing, exciting show. I'm sure it's not what Cody Collier wants. I'm sure he wishes he had a 50-point lead right now, but he's got lots of time. And I'm
right. And nothing against Brandon Fraser. He rides his butt off too. One of the things that concerns me about that class is that traditionally they're not having issues, other than maybe a rider thing where they run into a tree or run off course or something like that. But those machines are generally really, really reliable. And Collier's had 2 electrical issues this year with a get off. And I don't know what was up with Brandon Fraser. I have not spoken to him yet, so I don't know. He got 6th. And Sosby came in there for his 3rd podium of the year.
and Brandon's racing with a little, it's a little more complicated because he's dealing with some health issues, being, I think he's type 1 diabetic, but hopefully it wasn't anything related to that. but it's hard not to root for him considering, he has to maintain his health at such a high level to function well. So, you know, again, I don't root against anybody. I was kind of happy to see Cody win because we went out and filmed his bike a couple weeks ago at his private practice track, which I think we talked about that last week. And Cody, if you're watching, if you hurry up and get me those clips I'm looking for, I can get that video done this week, which is my plan. And it would be nice to release that coming off a win. So as a greedy journalist, for the sake of my story, I was excited that he won because it's like, okay, I'm not jinxing this guy. It's not like you film with ATV on demand and then your career falls apart. So yeah, I don't want to be known for that. I want to, but
I don't think you got to worry about Cody's career falling apart. He's focused individual and has a good program going. I had not thought about Brendan Fraser's diabetes when I was talking about it. He is really focused on his meal plan, his sugar levels. I mean, he not only does he have to worry about his machine and what's going on in the physical environment, but he's got to really take care of himself and not get sick, not get cold, because these things drastically affect him.
Right. No, I'm with it. I get it.
So I'm going to have to reach out to Brandon and find out what's going on, and so that in our race report I have better information. Chloe Harper figured out whatever was ailing her in the beginning of the year. She's 2 for 2. Ilioff has gotten second twice to her. Hannah Hunter and Caitlin Osborne seem to be duking it out for third, because Caitlin came in and got third and did really, really well. With Hannah in fourth, and that's 2 fourths in a row for Hannah. I'm wondering if she's not liking the Yamaha as much.
You never know. We've touched base a couple times online since I filmed her bike a few years ago. So I'm not 100% sure. I mean, yeah, it might be the Yamaha, but I think that it was getting a little harder for her the last couple of years while she was still on the Honda. So I'm not sure that it's the bike as much as everyone else has just stepped it up. But yeah, I mean, how old is Chloe Harper? I've seen her do some post race report video. She seems so young.
I think she's 19, 20 years old, something like that.
Yeah, it's funny. You get in your 40s, and it's like when I was in my 20s, I could just look at somebody and be like, "You're that old. You're that old. You're that old." Now it's like I look at younger people, and it's like 15 to 22. I can't tell them apart. They all look like kids. It's amazing. It's amazing how just time and age change your perception.
Hey, don't you remember when 50 was old?
I do, and I'm pushing that age now. I'm getting really close, and I don't feel old. Like, I can still go. It's I don't know what it is, but genetics. I don't have a lot of age.
Your mind will play tricks on you as you get older, thinking that you can do things that you really physically can't do anymore. But it's nice to keep pushing and keep fighting and keep trying. I know I train 3 days a week, and my body screams every day because of it. But if I didn't do it, I'd be even worse. So to me, pain is life.
Well, and I think I've been lucky. I haven't had a lot of, serious injuries with, which I don't want to go into I don't want to take us off track with it, but, I think part of what has let me maintain a decent level of athleticism, into my middle age is I never had a serious injury Yeah, I've had a shoulder separation. I had a concussion once. That sucked. Thank God I've only had one. I was nuts before that, so nobody can tell any difference. But I think for me, the secret to longevity has been, even though until 3 years ago, I was like, I always joke with people like, under this fat, I'm really ripped, and I was. I always worked out, always stayed in shape. Diet was kind of shit, which I straightened that out over the past few years. But I think the best thing was I did a lot of flexibility work. I did a lot of falling and rolling practice, like through martial arts. I was accustomed to hitting the ground and being pliable and rolling with it. And I was always intelligent that if I had an injury that was flaring up, if I got a little knee pain, if I got a little shoulder pain, don't work out, take a break, get the inflammation out, and then go back at it. And I think it's a good secret if you're wanting to be in shape and do things when you get older and still enjoy a high level of athleticism. It's like you got to listen to your body. And when you have an injury, now obviously if you're racing for a championship, that's a little more difficult. But if you can give your body the time to heal before you continue to get back on the gas, it's going to make a big difference in your longevity and not dealing with a lot of aches and pains as you age. Because at this point, I don't have them. And my wife, who's in her mid 40s, is like, oh, I'm so glad you've taken me to the gym through the years. Because I've got 30-year-old guys I work with at work, 30, 35, that are like, oh, my body hurts. She's like, I'm 45. I don't have any of that. So go to the gym, people.
Right on. Stretch, stretch, stretch. Mark Marquez is in Austin riding his Ducati at the highest level that I've seen. And you being a race fan, Joe, that likes competitiveness, you looked at a series where Honda dominated it, Yamaha dominated it, Ducati has dominated it at some points. And right now you have three manufacturers fighting for the title in MotoGP, which hasn't happened, and none of them are Honda or Yamaha. It's Aprilia, KTM, and Ducati out there, throwing major blows at each other to put themselves on top. And Aprilia has got the fastest guy this weekend with KTM in second, and your old has-been Mark Marquez seems to be the fastest Ducati rider in third. And that was yesterday in the sprint race. Right now in Austin, I believe that they're going, actually they go off in just a couple hours for the MotoGP race, and we'll get to see how those guys break down. But if you've ever get to go to a MotoGP race, it's an amazing experience. I have only gotten highlights. I have never got to go. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Do you think the competitiveness that they're having now, because I don't follow it that much. I used to watch it more when it was just like, okay, we have one sport channel, ESPN, and it's on it. So I used to see it more back in the day. But do you think the competitiveness among the non-Japanese brands is because of the rider? Or do you think that it's because the Japanese are just being too conservative? Because we see it in other segments, look at side by sides.
I'm gonna phrase it this way. KTM is hungry. They are just hungry. They want to be the number one motorsports manufacturer of motorcycles in the world, and they're headed that way. I think they've taken a little bit of their R&D away from their off-road division, but their off-road division is still stellar. Don't get me wrong. As much as I'm not a fan of them, you have to look at what they do as a company and as an organization, and they're on it. I mean, their MotoGP bike was horrible 3 years ago, and now they're contesting for a title. And I wouldn't say it was horrible. They were developing it,
Sure.
Look how they came into Supercross and outdoor motocross. I mean, for years, they were the joke of the industry. If you owned a KTM, people laughed at you. Now, KTM's selling more motorcycles than Honda and Yamaha. Um, Yamaha and Honda are struggling massively in MotoGP. I think they got big headed, didn't do the R&D, and it's hurt them. Aprilia is a smaller manufacturer. They have a big name in Europe. They're not really a huge name here in the States. I mean, a little few people like them, but not a lot. And they want to be recognized as one of the best in the world. And they're not building. They built some off-road stuff, but I don't see it. We don't see it in the States very often. So, and Takati always wants to be the guys. I'd like to see Takati build a freaking ATV. Gosh, their stuff is too fast. Oh man, it'd be like riding a Banshee on steroids. I mean,
Yeah, you could actually have an ATV at that point that costs as much as a Polaris Pro R. It would be the dream. Go buy yourself a $50,000 ATV.
I can facilitate that now without buying a Takati. So, well, that's another story. That's another story. There's just so much cool stuff going on in motorsports. If you're a motorsports fan like I am, I even watch NASCAR. Sheldon Creed, who drives in the series, he is in an Xfinity series. I mean, the guy is super nice kid. I got to see him drive a little bitty truck with a Briggs and Stratton engine in it and do things in that little car in our parking lot that I've not seen anybody else ever do. It could spin a donut in the thing, and it barely had enough power to pull itself down the street, and this kid's throwing it sideways and driving it like it's a drift car. It was just unbelievable. And now he's driving a NASCAR. So being an enthusiast of the sport, of all of it, is a lot of fun. So, Joe, I'm gonna let you round that off before we start our really big topic that's coming up, and everybody I think is really going to enjoy this one. So,
yeah, NASCAR's been tough for me. I don't really want to get into it, and it's old news, but when I see stupid shit, it tends to stick with me, and it's hard to let it go. And I've really enjoyed what NASCAR has done at the LA Coliseum, doing that little super tight race at LA Coliseum. What is it, Battle at the Bowl or something like that? I forget what they call that race, but
I think that's what they call it.
But I've had a bad taste in my mouth for NASCAR since that whole Bubba Wallace thing went down a few years ago. I have a hard time getting into it because it's like I think it's so poorly handled. I think NASCAR should have fired his ass and told him you're not welcome here anymore. There's just no way. It's old news, but for those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's like somebody found a rope hanging from a garage door in Bubba Wallace's pits, and the FBI had to come and investigate it to make sure it wasn't a hate crime. And before they even finished the second sentence on the news report, I'm just sitting here going, you've never seen a pull rope hang from a garage door before? Like you've never
when they show the photo of it, they show every door had a pull rope on it. And they were all different setups. His just happened to have a hoop in it, so you could put your hand inside the hoop instead of grabbing the normal where they had a ball on the end of them and pulling the door down.
Again,
the FBI is not your friend. Just remember that.
NASCAR should have been like, dude, every single garage door here has a pull rope. I'm sorry. We're not going to make a big stink out of this, and if you do it, you're out. I have no patience for that crap.
We live in the most racist country in the world.
And if something like that were really taking place and it was legit, I'd be one of the first people like, not acceptable. But anybody who's ever been in the country knows, I don't mean the United States country, I mean been out of the city. Anybody who's been out to the country knows what a garage door pull rope is. Yeah, that was just NASCAR going through the motions, participating in that woke crap, and I have no tolerance for it. So,
Great.
yeah. So anyway, so NASCAR next.
Well, Works is going off here in a few hours, so we won't know those results. Tori Matejs is still undefeated on the West Coast in the women's class in Works. It's very difficult to get the results like I can get GNCC, but I have struggled to get Works results until 2 or 3 days later. But I did see that Travis Damon got third on his 125 in the 125 pro class, and Tori Matejs killed it. So, she's undefeated. Lainey Fryer from the Work Series was back east racing motocross last weekend, and she came back, pulled off a second. So things are going good on the West Coast with the Works. But what I really want to talk to you about, Joe, is we had a gentleman on the show in the beginning of the year, and he was telling us about his Gen 3 frame and talking to us about how he was trying to change from the Suzuki mods to the Yamaha, and he's done it. He's got a Gen 3 frame with Yamaha format, basically in pieces. You can buy replacement parts for your OEM Yamaha from Walsh. You can also adapt this to 250cc 4-stroke engines from KTM, Yamaha, Honda, whatever, and bolt them into this chassis. And if you want to change next year to a 450, you can buy the motor mounts for it, and you don't have to buy a whole new bike.
Yeah, Mike Walsh, I've saw pictures of it. It's exciting, we're not seeing a whole lot from the OEMs, so it's to see him do that is very cool. Mike's an artist, and he's a mad scientist. I've heard some guys kind of criticize that, like, Mike's not all about volume and mass production. He just wants to build these one-off things. And it's like, well, yeah, then, we need to let other people in that company handle the mass production. Just let Mike Walsh be the mad scientist in the back room cooking up new stuff, because he certainly does. And it's very, it's exciting to see what he's done. I think that a lot of guys who own YFZ 450s who I had heard, I haven't had a YFZ 450 and broke a frame, but I've heard that if you crack certain sections of your frame, because it's like a 3 or 4 piece frame, including the subframe, that Yamaha, if you mess up part of the main frame, they'll only sell you a complete chassis. And to me, this is like, okay, well, I need a lower frame rail section. Call Walsh and get it. I need a rear cradle section. Call Walsh and get it. I mean, you could technically upgrade your chassis piece by piece, doing it like that. And yeah, so I mean, good for Mike. That's good for Walsh. Good for the sport. It's good, high dollar. It's going to be boutique. But if you've got the budget,
well,
cool.
I think that he deserves to get paid for his knowledge and his years in the sport and what he's doing. I'm not really as concerned about the price buying in the first time. It's just think about the longevity of life of being able to keep that chassis, because it's probably really good quality, for 4 or 5, 6, 7 years. And maybe you're changing from Honda to Yamaha, or Yamaha to Kawasaki, or KTM, or whatever you're doing. And all you're doing is changing the motor mounts to the thing, and you're still riding your machine with your shocks, and you're not having to buy new every time you turn around. I know some of that stuff has to be replaced. I get it. I totally get it. But let's be real. Okay, I know we want a 2-stroke in the chat. I get it. We want a 2-stroke, but come on. It's not as easy as throwing it out there. You got a YZ 250 or you got a KTM 300 to choose from on their 2-strokes. What's that other company, Joe? Do you remember that other company that they had? They come out of Canada. I believe they're coming out of Canada. They have a bunch of different 2-stroke engines.
Oh man.
I can't think of the name.
Yeah, they have like a 500 two-stroke or something.
Yep.
Yes. Oh God.
I'll
This
bet
is
money.
this is
I'll
what I calling them
go
doing
ahead.
this sooner.
I'll bet money that they'll be dropping one of those in the Walsh frame, and then you'll really see the people. Well, I don't know how it'll hold up with the vibrations of a two-stroke. The balancer. There's two strokes and four strokes are different, but this gives us.
Thought that engine was counterbalanced.
It is. It is from what I hear. It's Panthera.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's it.
Thanks, Ian, for letting us know that. Um, yeah, we'll have to see how that all works. Um, I don't think you're going to get a two-stroke back in the racing world like that. Plus, I want to know how are the rules? How's the AMA or ATV MX going to handle if you break your hip on the Yamaha frame that holds your rear link and your swing arm pivot bolt? How are they going to handle it if you buy a Walsh replacement part? It's got all the OEM dimensions on it. Are you going to be able to use it?
Right, because it's not a production frame. You know what? Change the rules.
I think they're going to have to put in amendments in there that you can use these aftermarket pieces to keep it alive. Because if Yamaha's not going to sell you pieces, and they're only going to sell you frames, and I know when you deal with, like, if you're a support rider, I'm sure that Bryson Neal and Joel Hetrick and a couple of the other guys in the industry are getting pieces when they need them, but the rest of us aren't. So we have to be able to do something with it. So they need to put amendments in the rules so that you can use these components that are factory spec.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's yeah, that's definitely something that should be updated. It just makes sense. I mean, what? It might be a little lighter, maybe, who knows? But if he's building out of chromoly instead of cast aluminum, if it's an aluminum piece, maybe it's not lighter, maybe it's heavier. Um, is that an advantage? I don't know. Not if all you care about is weight. So no, I think they need to make some room, and they need to make some exceptions for this production rule. Something like that seems like it really makes sense.
I think so. I think the advancement of another manufacturer coming in, that we've talked about. We've let the story rest for a few weeks, but I think a company, it may not be KO, it may be somebody else. CF Moto might be the guys that come in with something, or maybe there's a collaboration from somebody. And you never know. One of the big four may surprise us, and come back with another machine. But I'm not really sure that we're going to see a Japanese 450. We may see a Chinese 450, and I think they're learning. I really believe they're learning and they're listening, and they know that if they follow some guidelines by the people that are talking with them, they're probably going to come out with a machine that is A, sellable to the industry, and then B, accepted by the aftermarkets to advance the series, or advance us into a two manufacturer deal instead of just Yamaha out there beating everybody up.
Well, the aftermarket's going to be fully on board if a machine even looks like it has potential. I mean, they already are. We've got 6 or 7 companies that are developing for the little KO Jackal 200. The 200 is like, it's probably not going to be a Raptor beater. Their 300 might be, but even for the 200, the aftermarket's like, here's a new sport quad with a overhead cam engine that has a chain drive. Okay, it checks the boxes. There's no aftermarket for it. We're building parts. DBR is doing Nerf bars and heel guards and skid plates, bumpers. those were parts that weren't available for that bike just 6 months ago. Rossier, sorry, Dave. He's got a pipe for it. Fuel Customs doing an intake. Nolan's going to do suspension. So I mean, the aftermarket is fully on board to support whatever manufacturer comes out with something that looks like it has some potential for racing or modification even. So, I mean, the opportunity is just wide open for another OEM that would want to come into the space to have full aftermarket support. If you come out with a dirt bike and you want FMF to build a pipe for it, they're going to be like, yeah, no problem. You got to buy 1,000.
Right.
You got to buy a huge volume. ATV pipe manufacturers are like, we got a new quad to build a pipe for? Sweet, sign us up. So, the opportunity for getting assistance and support from the aftermarket, it's a much easier road to hoe for an potential ATV manufacturer. There's another brand that Jeff over at Dirt Wheels is working with. I can't think of their name. It's another, I believe they're a Chinese manufacturer. There's a gentleman who works there who used to work at Can-Am. And they're doing some stuff with them. So, there's another company that wants to kind of get into the ATV space and do stuff with it. And who knows where that might lead them. Hopefully one day into a real performance model. So, I'm having a lot of Bidens today.
Hey, have you got any more information on the B&R 150 or whatever that was that they were building?
No, but I got to talk to Ryan. He just sent me a kill switch for a little project we got coming up, but that's a conversation I definitely have to have. I was talking to Mike, Cody Coyer's mechanic, and I was like, yeah, it'll be cool. It's going to be like 18 grand. But he put up their website and supposedly, don't quote me on this, but supposedly that bike's going to be in like the 11s, which, $11,000 sounds like a whole lot of money for a 150 kids race bike. If you don't know anything about ATVs, it sounds like a lot of money. But go buy a CRF 150 and take the engine and then go buy a full JB chassis, full roller and stick that motor in it. You're going to be in that bike for 20 grand by the time you're done. So
you think it's only 20?
If B&R could deliver a raceable 150 4-stroke high performance motor, a CRF engine, or whatever, CR 4-stroke engine, in the 11s, that's outstanding.
Right. And if they sell enough of them, then they can make it a production model, and fit the needs of a production class.
What production class is there in 150 4-stroke? There is none.
There isn't one right now, but if B&R gets their deal and can make it a production deal, they could push for it.
If need be, or just let it be an open class and, because it sounds like they're going to build a high-end bike with a lot of race parts. I don't know a lot of details on it yet. That's definitely on my short list of things that I'd like to get my hands on and film. So yeah, B&R, call me. Otherwise, I'm going to call you.
Because I want to talk to him about it as well. I'm not in the same video mode as you, but I'm definitely into, having him on the show and talking about it and getting more insight into what this is all about.
Yeah, that's extremely exciting. I was thinking this morning, with that bike and maybe something's going to happen with KO, just with everything that's going on, it's like, I know I've been saying lately, it's never been bleaker as a sport ATV enthusiast. It's worse now than it was in the 90s, but at the same time, there's starting to be some glimmers of hope. I know I was not told this was embargoed, so I'm not breaking an embargo here, but I know DRR is coming with an updated youth model in the not so distant future, which is exciting. And you got the B&R production hybrid. I don't know exactly what it is, but it sounds like very promising. We got chaos. So there's some glimmers of hope that are starting to kind of show themselves a little bit. So maybe we're going to have something to get excited about soon.
Well, you said something about bleak in the 90s. I don't ever remember our industry being bleak. I remember that we didn't have a manufactured quad for a number of years that you were racing. You could still buy a Blaster, a Warrior, and a Banshee, but and you didn't get a Honda 400EX till 99. After 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, hybrids were really, really taken off in a lot of different forms. But the industry was in a huge growth pattern in the aftermarkets at that time. But one of the problems you have today is the aftermarkets have been, beat up by the factories to the point where they're struggling to come back. Because after the last time the factories came in, they decimated us with some of the things they did in the industry. I'm not saying that we should be anti-factories, but next time if they come back, they need to take care of the aftermarket people, because we're the ones that are carrying the water. And
let me ask you, how do you feel? We haven't had this conversation before, so this is different. How do you feel from a guy who in your day job, we work for Duncan Racing, you work for a motor builder. How do you feel that in the early 2000s 454 stroke boom, other than frame builders, how was the aftermarket impacted negatively by the production bikes?
Well, you couldn't do them all, so you had to pick your brands to work on. Our company, like ours, we favored the Yamaha and the Honda, just because they were the best quality. The Suzuki was dominated by Yoshimura, so you'd struggle to compete with them at that point. I don't think that there was very many people specializing in the KTM or the Polaris, because there was the KTM motors. We got into them a little bit. To answer the question, it was harder. The development was harder. Even though we were a 4-stroke company before a 2-stroke company, and then went to 4-stroke, the modern day 4-stroke engine is not like anything that, the young people don't know any better, but the old school 4-stroke was, it was just nuclear. You couldn't hurt them. You just rode them and rode them and rode them, pour water in them, take the gas out and just ride them. And they just ran and they just would go. And the modern day 4-stroke engine is not anything like that. So the transition for a lot of us was harder. I wouldn't say harder. It was just more involved at first. And one of the things that you have to do is you had to make money. So you had to pick your poison. And I don't think I'm answering your question.
Well, and I think maybe part of the reason for that is that I don't think that the production rules and the production 4-strokes really had a direct impact on the aftermarket. And what I mean by that, of course it had impact. When times change, things change, people get reshuffled. I remember, back in that time frame, because I was a fan of I came in as to the industry as a professional in 2004, 20-year anniversary, people. But I was a fan of the sport and of sport ATVs for 14 years before that. I really started following the ATV scene probably around 90 is when I started reading the magazines and getting into it as a 2-wheel guy, and like, maybe these 4-wheelers are kind of fun. And there was a changing of the guard a little bit in the early 2000s, 2004, 2005, 2006, as those bikes were hitting the market. I saw some motor guys kind of get shuffled around. Some people, and you know, not Duncan, but and I'm not naming names, don't care. There were some four-stroke guys that were very competitive on the old school four-strokes that when it went to this new four-stroke technology, like what you're talking about, it shifted. Like the deck got shuffled. Because it was a lot to keep up with. But if you look at two-wheel motocross, since we talk a lot about that on this show, you know, talking about Yoshimura and Suzuki, like they had so much work into it, keeping up with it. They kind of had that segment. Well, it's just like Pro Circuit and Kawasaki today, you know, and like Pro Circuit and Kawasaki for insert time frame, you know, 20 years, because, you know, Pro Circuit's a top company to go to, at least perception wise. If you're a Kawasaki guy, it's like, who are you going to go to? Mitch Payton. He's got the guys who went on the green bikes. So I think that there was some shuffling with the engine builders, but to say that the four strokes of the early 2000s really decimated the aftermarket, I don't think it was
I think it was the manufacturers and how they handled it decimated us. And yes, there was a shuffling of the engine builders and the way they worked and where they focused. I would just say a company like ours, we still had our two-stroke line that we still had to support. And you also had a shuffling of where we were going to be. Were we going to go back east? Were we going to focus back there? Were we going to spend a lot of time back there? And that changed due to lifestyle changes. Spending as many years back east as we did and doing the traveling that we did, we became more of a West Coast orientated company, just us. And then there started to become more East Coast orientated companies. So yeah, there was a lot of changes at that point, and the factory's changing it, the motor design changed it, a lot of things, and age changed it. You know, I mean, just the perspective of the people in the industry's age. Now you're seeing a transition from these companies.
But it seems like what really happened to the aftermarket, at least from my perspective, was, okay, what did we lose? Well, we're not running aftermarket frames anymore, so we don't need a legger frame, we don't need a roll frame for these production 450s because you couldn't run them. So there's the one segment where I look at it and it's like, okay, the OEMs coming back, who did it really kind of screw over or make, yes, I think all those bikes hitting the market, going from two-stroke to four-stroke, when you guys had all been very focused on, not to say you didn't build four strokes, but like you said, a 400EX is a totally different animal than a 450R. You had a big jump from two strokes to four strokes. The four strokes that came in were far more sophisticated, tighter tolerances, can't tolerate as much dirt, can't tolerate as much abuse without maintenance, more expensive to build, titanium valves. I mean, not like you couldn't do that in a 400EX, but maybe not as big of a deal.
You went from old stock car motors to Indy car motors in a week.
Yeah, so I think basically it wasn't that the manufacturers didn't do what they needed to do for the aftermarket. I just think the problem, it seems like, other than the frame guys who couldn't sell frames, the problem that you guys had in aftermarket companies was you'd been developing the same bike from 99 till 2003. And then not 99, 89 till 2003. Now, yeah, you had Banshees, you had 250Rs, you had the 400EX, but really the 250R carried it a majority of the time. So you guys are all primarily focused on one bike for a majority of the racing for a majority of those years. And now all of a sudden, wham, here's like 6 brand new four strokes. How do we possibly keep up? I don't think it was the fault of the manufacturers. As much as it just was, the whole aftermarket was set up at a certain pace based upon the number of available vehicles. And now all of a sudden, instead of one real race bike to build for, you had like 5 all at once.
Right.
Honda, Suzuki, Can-Am, KTM, Kawasaki, 6. You had 6. Who am I forgetting? Okay, does Polaris count? 7. So, I don't think the aftermarket was burnt by the manufacturers. I think the aftermarket was overwhelmed by the manufacturers. Just with, what do we work on? Which one do we build?
I agree and disagree, because I lived a portion of all of it, and we just picked our poison with ones that we wanted to work on, and looked at the quality of the others and moved away from them.
So, what do you think that the OEMs could have done differently that would have made it better than just building new rad?
They should have came to the people that were carrying the industry and brought us all in. Spread the wealth with who's getting the teams and what they're going to do. Plus, when they jacked up the rider salaries so high, the aftermarket guys, after the factories pulled out, a lot of these guys didn't want to ride unless we were paying them. And you're dealing with companies that couldn't afford to pay riders. It just wasn't like that. It's just not like that. And that hurt us really bad. But also, we got to work with a little pieces of trickles of all the factories. So I'm not saying that we didn't get it. I know that Curtis got a little. I know Baldwin got some. And then there were guys that shouldn't have even got a bunch. And you just scratch your head. And I think that the factories picked the wrong people to head their deals, and put the wrong stuff in there. You got a video getting ready to drop here right now.
Yeah, in a minute. I got a couple minutes.
Okay, well, so I really enjoyed that time, but it was also stressful and hard, because when you had to go compete against the factory and you weren't a factory, and let's be really honest, the factories were only really in for a short time. When it's satellite like it is now, a satellite team is not a factory team. A factory team is when the factory rig rolls out with factory mechanics and factory engineers and runs the show, period. They control everything. What A-arms go on that bike, what shocks go on that bike, and the riders go to those specific sponsors and get something from them at the same time. And there's input from the riders, but the factories control the whole thing.
So really, in a nutshell, what you're saying is that the problem is all these factories came in, rewrote all the rules of the game, and then before the aftermarket could even fully get on board with all of it, the flash in the pan was over and they were out.
Yep.
Okay, I'm on board. Makes sense to me.
Hey, in the chat, 50 Magic just asked a question about DRR. Has a sport quad on their website, a 450cc XC sport quad. Have you ever seen anything like that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we talked about that last week. That's kind of how I knew they're going to update the Mini. And again, that was not told to me. It was embargoed. Don't talk about it. There's been pictures of it online of the new 90 or 50 or whatever one that is for some time now. So,
embargoed.
What do I mean embargoed?
Yeah,
I didn't sign a non-disclose agreement. I wasn't told by DRR you can't discuss this. But I had called them to discuss the 450. Unfortunately, the 450 sounds like it's going to be no more. Nobody ever did anything with it. Nobody looked at it. It had a high-sung engine. The problem with that unit, and the reason that I never really embraced it or did anything with it, was because it was based on the same chassis of their old DRX 250 and 300, which had a lower horsepower CVT engine. And that thing only had like 4 inches of travel front and rear. It was minimal. So when DRR came out with that 450XC, I had talked to Lou over there, who runs the company, and said, "Look, what's the story?" And I was like, "Is this different than the 250 and 300?" And he's like, "Nope, same chassis, same suspension, basically." And he's like, "That's why we kind of listed for barrel racing and cross country, because it doesn't have a ton of suspension travel." Which I'm scratching my head, like, going, have you been to a cross country? Those things have all kinds of suspension travel, but whatever. But since it was down on suspension, we never really went after it. Now, I talked to Leon Spiden, who races the Nationals, Jaden Lauderville's mechanic, and he's a diehard enthusiast like me, and he's like, "Joe, please get me one I can look at. I live in that area. I'll go look at it." So we reached out to DRR, and apparently they are not going to bring that unit into the country anymore. There was no demand. Nobody did anything with it.
Yeah, because it was junk.
Opportunity, I don't know. It kind of looks like a Z400 clone, the chassis, especially if you look at the swing arm. I mean, it looks like a Z400 swing arm. So I don't know if that was a missed opportunity or not. Now Hyosung at an Indy show years ago, when all the four strokes were still in the game, Hyosung that did that motor for that 450XC had a Honda 450R clone sitting in their booth, and Honda came walking over and were like, this is what I was told. I didn't witness it. Honda came walking over and was like, "Yeah, you're going to make that quad disappear really fast." But hey, disappeared. So Hyosung, if you still got some of those lurking in the back room and you want to go into production, please do so. Because Honda's gone and they don't care.
Yeah, Honda doesn't care. Do whatever you got to do now, because they're just. I seen a picture of a new rally bike they're building for the rallies, and it seems like that's where all their focus is. So, we need to come up with our own 450. So everybody look for us to reach out to BNR to talk to them about their machine. And Joe, I don't know if you'll have any more information from KO anytime soon, but we need to stay on these things. And I really think I need to get a hold of Panthera as well and talk to them, because we need to have this two-stroke conversation and see what we can do with it. And then maybe even get Mike Walsh on to talk to him about something like that as well.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what he has to say about that frame coming out, and what his plans are with it. Hopefully Mike will build some kind of dreamy machine and I get a chance to film it. That's definitely a company I'd like to kind of work with, whether it's a sponsored deal or not, just because what they're doing is rad. So I'm an enthusiast. Sometimes you got to do it for love.
Exactly. I totally agree, brother. I totally agree. Hey, Joe, I know you got some things you got to get to. And everybody in the chat, I want to really appreciate you guys chiming in and helping us with some of these categories. Mini Bike Madman and 5.0 Magic. Hey, Square One Speed Channel. I think Ian might be at a works race himself or coming back from one. So thank you guys so much. Everybody have an amazing rest of your weekend. And let's talk ATVs next Sunday, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Joe?
Can't wait. See you then.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you later. Have a great one, everybody.